Rock and rollers. Welcome to another astonishing episode of Collection Connection here on Good Show Ponsonby. It's a game I play with my brother, Plastic Eric, whose videos live on his channel, The Plastic Soundwave Cult. We live on opposite coasts, and one of the ways that we stay in touch is by talking music, which we parlayed into this video series where we talk about an album from our personal record collections that share something in common with the album that the other brother talked about in his most recent video. There's a continuity to it, but that doesn't mean that you can't jump in anywhere, because ultimately it's just an excuse to talk about records. So what are we connecting today? Well, Eric showed I Am, the 9th album from the iconic Earth, Wind & Fire from 1979, and from that I forged a connection to the 4th studio album from the British synth-pop duo Erasure. From 1989, it's Wild. And what is the connection between these two seemingly unrelated albums? I ain't telling you. The challenge is for you to figure it out from the clues given and to put your guess down in the comments. But first, let us reveal the connection between the previous pair of albums, those being Earth, Wind & Fire's I Am and Pressure Chief from Cake. Now, Eric was being a bit of a stinker on this one, and his declared connection to me was that each album had an Earth on the front of it. With the Cake album, there was an icon of an Earth behind the shaking hands there on the cover, and on the Earth, Wind & Fire album, it was the word Earth. Nobody got that, but we did get a successful guess with an unintended connection, that being that they both have trumpeters in the band. So it is a true connection. In Cake's case, it is Vince DiFiore, and in Earth, Wind & Fire's case, they had kind of a revolving door with players coming in and out, but on this particular album, it was Romley Michael Davis playing trumpet on this record. And so that guess was made by Steve Carlson from his channel, the Steve Carlson Vinyl Community. And you can check out his stuff over there. Congratulations, Steve. I think maybe that's his first successful guess in the game. So with that out of the way, let's get to the show. Right then, Eric showed I Am from Earth, Wind & Fire. That is a band that is a kind of a strange blind spot for me. I'm certainly aware of Earth, Wind & Fire and some of their biggest hits, a couple of which were on this album, I Am. But it's a band that I've never followed. I have a few theories as to why that might be, what contributed to it. I think their style, I think a lot of bands looked terrible in the 1970s, but also the album covers themselves seemed like portents of some deep mythology or something like that, that didn't feel like anything I would want to listen to. And a song like After the Love Is Gone was schmaltzy, would have been the kind of schmaltz I probably would have hated as a kid. And the fact that they never played on Top of the Pops. They certainly scored some hits in the UK, but other similar bands showed up. Chic came out, Kool and the Gang came out, Kid Creole and the Coconuts came out, gave them a big hit record out there in England. But the Earth, Wind & Fire, anytime that they were featured on Top of the Pops, it was with the dance routine from, what is it, Legs Inc., I think. Is that what they called it? Legs Incorporated? I forget the name of it, but I always hated those dance routines on on Top of the Pops, and so I probably had a bad association with Earth, Wind & Fire over that. On the flip side of the coin, I'm a huge sucker for horn arrangements on songs, and almost nobody ever did it better than Earth, Wind & Fire. And so there's definitely some thread there to follow. I knew Boogie Wonderland and After the Love Is Gone, but I wasn't necessarily familiar with the other. There was a few singles from this album, more than they tended to release from albums. And I didn't recognize Star, which is not to be confused with Shooting Star, which is their arguably biggest hit. September is their biggest hit, like biggest seller, but Shooting Star from a few years earlier, 1975, hit number one on the charts. Although they had a bunch of number ones on the R&B/soul charts, the only time they hit number one on the Hot 100 was with Shooting Star. And I just found out from doing my research here in the last couple of days that September only appeared on their greatest hits album. So it's one of the rare cases of a greatest hits album, including a new track that actually became one of their greatest hits. Those things usually seem to defeat themselves. These collections will have a new track or two on them, and they never seem to live up to the actual hits that exist on the album. But September, arguably their biggest hit, depending on what side you're arguing, Shooting Star or September, and that came out right prior to I Am, that album. So they had a little juice behind them, a little momentum. I like the horn arrangements, I love the sort of the big arrangements, and I like the funk elements, and I like when they rock out a little more. And it's an album I'm still not sure like where I would start. If you got some thoughts on that, let me know. Maybe the best of would be enough for me, although I know that first one came out before I Am, which has Boogie Wonderland and After the Love Is Gone. So maybe I would want something else. But yeah, it's a strange blind spot. I have come to appreciate them more in the last decade, 15 years, 20 years, without ever really going out and picking up any music from them, just because I felt like one of those bands that had such a catalog. It's like I don't know where to start, and I still didn't and don't really like many of their album covers. At least the greatest hits is just a picture of the band looking like they're having fun. So maybe that's another reason to go for that one, because it doesn't seem to have all these like hieroglyphs and weird fantasy seeming elements on them. But anyway, that's Earth, Wind and Fire. I Am. What I connected it to is Erasure's Wild from 1989. I haven't talked about Erasure in a while. It's been, I think, over a year since the last time I showed an Erasure record, but I have an assload of Erasure albums just in conjunction with this record. I have my original copy, and I have kind of the 30th anniversary, mostly for the remaster, I suppose, because I actually have a lot of the singles from the time. I got You Surround Me. I got, which one is this? Drama, Blue Savannah, and Star. And in addition to that, I didn't pull it out, but I have a big singles box from them that covers all this stuff. So I got a lot of double coverage on it. But yeah, so eventually I was going to have to talk about some more Erasure. But Wild, as their fourth album, ironically, is probably my least favorite of their early records, when they were sort of the most culturally relevant. I love Wonderland and The Circus, and The Innocents is good. The singles are fantastic, and the rest of it feels a little fillery on The Innocents. And then they came back around after this with Chorus, which happens to be my favorite Erasure album in 1991. But this is also the era where the singles had like some of my favorite B-sides. So what I hold dear from the Wild era of Erasure is the B-sides. Songs like Run Around on the Underground and No GDM and Dreamlike State and Sweet Sweet Baby. And the soul mix, actually, of Star is one of the few cases where I like a remix of a song better than the actual album version of the song. I feel like the soul mix is definitive. So I love the singles and the B-sides from this era more than I love the actual Wild album. The major exception there being the track Drama, which I think is definitely a top 3 single of all time, but it's vying for number 1. I love Drama. And it had kind of an unusual structure for them in that it just kind of builds as it goes along. I know a lot of songs kind of hit a point where they get bigger and faster. This one just sort of gains momentum. It's like it's rolling downhill and kind of just gets bigger and bigger as it goes along. And kind of folds into itself in a way that I think is fantastic. I love drama. The other singles, Blue Savannah, not a bad song, but I don't love it. Star, as I mentioned, I prefer the soul mix that came on the single. And You Surround Me, and I think How Many Times even was a single. And some of the stuff is fun, and I know some people, my wife included, this is like their favorite Erasure album. So I'm maybe in a large minority on this, but I feel like Wild was the first real kind of step down in quality for them. Myself, doesn't make it a bad album, but it is not one that I reach for. I reach for the singles, the B-sides, and I can appreciate the silliness on songs like La Gloria, which has kind of a, not even kind of a Spanish bend, it's got an over-the-top Spanish leaning. And other songs that aren't bad, like You Surround Me and Brother and Sister. 2,000 Miles bothers me just because the title is the same as the Pretenders' 2,000 Miles, which is one of my favorite Pretenders songs, so I feel like it's a vastly superior song, and so it annoys me that they have this song called 2,000 Miles. But with all that said, I should probably wrap it up here, and if you think you know the connection between Erasure's Wild and the Earth, Wind, and Fire album, I Am, leave your guess down in the comments. First right answer will get a shout out in the next video. Some of the connections have been pretty tough lately. This one is, I feel like I've telegraphed it pretty well. So yeah, leave that guess down in the comments, and you can look for my brother's response, Eric, over on the Plastic Soundwave Cult channel on Monday. He will connect an album to Erasure's Wild, and you'll have another chance to play. But again, you don't have to play the game. If you just want to talk about Erasure, what you like about them, what you hate about them, or Earth, Wind, and Fire, and give me some listening tips on maybe where to start for just a guy who loves horn arrangements on his songs, where the horn arrangements are tight, but I feel like they're probably tight everywhere, so I guess it's more where the song's good. But with that, that's all I have to say. So I thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Good show, Ponsonby.